Becoming a good NFL quarterback is not about how many passing yards you can get in a season, it's not about throwing 30 touchdowns or even dominating mediocre teams. It's about making things work when everything else goes wrong. It's posting a winning record with a bottom 5 offensive line every year like Russell Wilson, or making the playoffs with receivers off the practice squad like Carson Wentz. Despite being picked in the 6th round and put into an offense that wasn't designed for him, Gardner Minshew proved in his rookie season that he can produce even when things don't come together the way you might want them to. Even though Minshew Mania peaked in week 1 and gradually declined through the 2019 season, I think that there is a path to offensive success in Jacksonville with Minshew under center. Of the rookie quarterbacks who started more than 10 games last year, Minshew was statistically the best, and it really wasn't close. He didn't start as many games as Kyler Murray or Daniel Jones, which caused his season totals to take a hit, but when evaluating these three quarterbacks on a per snap and per game basis, Minshew was by far the best. Despite starting less games than the other two, Minshew won the most games as a starter, he was the most accurate passer of the group, he had the lowest interception rate, his average yards per attempt and passer rating were both highest, and he had the most game-winning drives and the least amount of starts. Now, I still think Kyler Murray is a stud and will likely end up being the best quarterback in this class, but we have to give credit where credit is due, and Minshew deserves a lot of credit for leading an offense that was otherwise mediocre at best to a 500 record as a starter, and putting up some pretty impressive numbers along the way. Even though he was put into a new offense with a pretty bad offensive line and unproven receiving core, Minshew posted arguably the best deep passing numbers in the entire league. His passer rating while throwing at least 20 yards downfield was the best in the league, his completion percentage and yards per attempt averages were both third best, and he was one of only 2 quarterbacks who didn't throw an interception while throwing deep. Arm strength isn't necessarily one of Minshew's best qualities, but his ability to put the ball in the right place based on defensive back leverage combined with his mobility inside the pocket makes him extremely dangerous while throwing downfield. Take a look at this deep ball from week 5 against the Panthers. Minshew wants to target his X or weak side receiver DJ Chark on a go route, but it isn't as simple as throwing the ball up and hoping for the best. The way Minshew throws this ball will be determined by the way the defensive back James Bradberry defends the route. When he gets to the line of scrimmage, the first thing Minshew does is motion his Z or strong side receiver into a reduced or nasty split in an effort to determine what kind of coverage the Panthers are in. When that receiver gets set, the defensive back lined up opposite him is aligned in off coverage with heavy outside leverage, which tells Minshew that it's most likely zone coverage. Combine that with the single high safety look, and Minshew knows that the Panthers are probably in cover 3. When he takes the snap, Minshew immediately looks toward Chark to read James Bradberry's leverage. Even though the Panthers are in cover 3, Bradberry's playing stack technique while maintaining inside leverage, which is not their traditional way of playing zone coverage. Stack technique is one of 2 techniques defensive backs use in man coverage, and it's used to keep the receiver in front of them. This tells Minshew that he needs to throw the ball hard to Chark's back shoulder rather than lobbing it over the top for him to run under. But before he makes the throw, Minshew has to make sure that the deep safety isn't in a position to make a play on the ball, which he can do with his eyes. Take a look at Minshew's eyes through the duration of the play. When he first takes the snap, he looks over at Bradberry to determine his coverage technique, then he glances at the deep middle of the field to hold the safety, and once he knows that the safety can't get over to Chark, he throws a perfect ball to Chark's back shoulder. This was veteran-level deep passing, not only in terms of ball placement, but also because of the way Minshew held that deep safety with his eyes. And in case you're wondering because the ball kind of pops out at the end, this was ruled a catch. Here's another example from week 16 against the Falcons. Atlanta's in their cover 3, and Minshew wants to target his Z receiver Chris Conley on the Stutter Fade against Bleedy Ray Wilson. The goal of this route is to get the DB to jump on the stutter step at the stem of the route, giving the receiver the opportunity to run by him and catch a pass over his shoulder. Conley's job is to speed release to close the gap between him and the defensive back, then to stutter step to sell the hitch, and finally to accelerate downfield. This route is very difficult to defend, especially when it's being run by a guy who runs a 4-3 like Conley, because even the slightest bite on that stutter step will cause the DB to be beat over the top. Ray Wilson bites on the fake just enough for Conley to run by him, but when Minshew threw this ball, Conley still didn't have a step on his defender. Minshew lobbed the ball out in front of Conley because he knew Conley had the speed to run under it and get into the end zone. If this ball was thrown to the receiver's back shoulder like the last one, it probably would have resulted in an incompletion. So the fact that Minshew is an accurate passer downfield is important, but his ability to read defensive leverage is one of the many reasons that he was so great at throwing downfield last year. Now, it's more than just ball placement and ability to read leverage that make Minshew such a great deep passer. His mobility inside the pocket that leads to extra time for his receivers to get open is just as, if not more important. Minshew didn't have the luxury of a great offensive line who could consistently give him enough time to hit long developing route concepts, but those route concepts could still be called because of how great Minshew was at avoiding pressure. Take this play from back in week 1 as an example. It's third down and the Jaguars called their deep dagger concept, which is designed to beat 3 deep coverages like cover 3, which is what the Chiefs are in on this play. The concept has a go route from the number 2 to clear out the middle high safety and a 15-yard dig from the number 1, which is supposed to get into the space between the hook zone linebackers and deep safeties. The problem is this dig route will take about 3 seconds to develop, which is a relatively long time for the protection to hold up. The pocket begins to collapse as Emmanuel Ogbah wins on the right edge, but Minshew feels the pressure coming toward his right shoulder and steps up to let that dig route from Chris Conley get open. According to Pro Football Focus, on average, Minshew took 2.7 seconds to throw, he had 2.9 seconds in the pocket, and took 3.4 seconds to sack, all 3 numbers being higher than that of Nick Foles. The fact that Minshew was able to hold onto the ball for a long time without taking an absurd amount of sacks was not a result of better offensive line play when he was on the field. It was a result of him being able to feel and escape pressure as the pocket collapsed. On average, Minshew threw the ball 0.3 seconds later than Nick Foles, which might not sound like a lot, but it really is. Foles took an average of 2.4 seconds to throw, which was 3rd fastest in the league, while Minshew's average of 2.7 ranked 34th among quarterbacks who took at least 100 snaps. The fact is, Minshew held onto the ball for a lot longer than Foles with the same offensive line and still posted a lower sack rate. Take a look at this play from week 8 against the Jets. The Jaguars called a design rollout to the right with a flood concept in an effort to overload the play side and find holes in the Jets' zone coverage. New York sent Jamal Adams to blitz off the left side against Leonard Fournette in pass protection, and this play really should have resulted in a sack. Adams is the best pass rushing safety in the league, and even despite a pretty bad pass blocking attempt from Fournette, Minshew was still able to evade the tackle and find Chris Conley downfield for a 70-yard touchdown. Now, it's clear that Minshew is at his best when he can take a relatively long time to throw and hit one of his receivers deep downfield, which begs the question, how do you implement a scheme that gets the most out of this particular skill set? Well, the answer is through heavy play action. Minshew was quite possibly the best play action quarterback of the 2019 season outside of Ryan Tannehill, and yet the Jaguars coaching staff didn't call it very often. On play action, Minshew's passer rating went up by more than 50, his completion percentage jumped to an insane 77%, his yards per attempt went up by more than 4, his touchdown rate went from 4% to almost 8%, and his interception rate dropped to 0. The problem is, the Jaguars only called play action 14% of the time, which was the lowest rate in the entire league. This is where Minshew excels, and implementing a play action heavy system will only help everyone around him. It'll give his receivers more time to get open, it'll give him more opportunities to throw deep, and it'll ultimately stretch the defense, which will open running lanes for Leonard Fournette. This is the blueprint to offensive success in Jacksonville, and it's way too obvious for me to be the only one to see it. We saw what implementing this type of system did for Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill last year in Tennessee, and I don't think it's crazy to think that Minshew and Fournette can find success under a somewhat similar offense. Now, the biggest concern I have with Gardner's future is uncertainty in the offensive scheme. Even though Minshew started 12 games for the Jags, the coaching staff didn't make a significant effort to work to his strength. He was pretty much running an offense that was designed for Nick Foles without heavy play action and emphasis on the quick game. The coaching staff needs to commit to Gardner and design an offense specifically for him, which plays into my biggest concern. Even after some lights-out performances early last season, the Jaguars decided to bench him in favor of Nick Foles returning from an injury, which was a bad decision not only because Foles didn't play very well when he was put back in, but also because they refused to commit to their rookie quarterback despite convincing performances week in and week out. This may or may not work out how I expect it to work out, but one thing is for sure. We have not seen the last of Minshew Mania, and this is only the beginning. Thanks so much for watching this week's video. I plan on making one on JJ Watt next, but if there's anyone specific you'd like to see, let me know. I'm always looking for new video ideas, but that's all I've got for now. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.